What's up, and welcome to Surging Ahead's Rearview Mirror. This is Brett, and today we're going to be talking about Texas blaming renewables, Elon Musk tweeting about full self-driving, Sandy Munro gets a Volkswagen ID4, and much, much more. Stick around, we'll dive right in. Our first story today comes from arsTECHNICA. They title it, Amazon Warns Texas Don't Pass Bill That Would Drive Up Wind and Power Costs. The actual letter to Texas was from the PREF, which is the Partnership for Renewable Energy and Finance. If you look here, there's a lot of member companies, one of which is Amazon. Google's also in there, and several more traditional companies are in there as well. The biggest takeaways are the excerpts they brought out from that article and kind of what the bill does. So in the article they talk about, it's important to note that these changes neither enhance electric reliability nor lower consumer costs, the letter states. They appear to be premised on the assumption that renewable energy was disproportionately responsible for the state's February power outages, a thesis that has been unequivocally discredited. The bill would require the grid operator, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, to directly assign ancillary service costs to wind and solar power specifically. The PREF letter counters that not only do all generators utilize ancillary services, but costs for these services have remained flat over the last decade, while wind and solar have grown by more than 250%. So I think really the big takeaway here is Texas is trying to basically shift all the blame towards renewables and make them cover all of the costs of stabilizing the grid for the peaky outages that renewables tend to provide. But the actual big issue was this winter when millions of Texans lost power, largely because they did not treat their natural gas pipelines in such a way that prevented them from freezing. So this isn't to say wind didn't also stay a problem. They did not invest on many of the wind farms in the necessary precautions to make sure that they operated fully in the very coldest of weather, but assigning all the blame to renewables and then pinning all of the costs on renewables is just bad policy. So that's all I'll say on that one, but good on Amazon, Google, and all those other companies for pushing back and trying to see better change in this area. Our second story comes from Electrek, where they talk about Tesla hiking solar roof price on contracts signed over a year ago. So a lot of Tesla customers were sent an email with the following text. We have increased the price of solar roof and have added adjustments for individual roof complexity. You will receive an email in the next 1 to 2 days when your new agreement is ready for your review and acceptance before moving forward. If you are no longer interested in moving forward with solar roof, you can cancel your order by logging into your Tesla account and your deposit will automatically be refunded. We will be prioritizing customers based on the order in which they accept their updated agreements. They go on to talk about one customer who they spoke to that had placed their order 9 months ago, and their bill was $77,000. They'd even had an inspector come out in March who confirmed that everything looked fine and the roof had no special circumstances. Then, after this most recent update, they suddenly got a system price adjustment of $118,870.33, which equates to, according to Electrek, a 54.3% increase in the cost of their solar roof. So a couple things here. This is a really bad look for Tesla. I understand them wanting to make more money off of the solar roof. I understand them raising prices. I think it is an extremely poor taste for them to do this to existing customers and have such dramatic price increases on those. Even if you do have and are losing money on this, the amount of sales on solar roofs have to be so small as to not have any real material impact on Tesla's bottom line. But the negative press you get out of doing this to your customers and the possible loss of customers for several other things could be dramatic, and it just seems like a terrible thing to do. And so while I don't know all the reasons for this, and there could certainly be extenuating circumstances that I'm not privy to, this seems quite dramatic and is a really bad look for Tesla. The other thing that I find really crappy about this whole deal is the prioritization of customers based on accepting the updated agreements. You've been sitting here for a year with this agreement out there, and they require you to immediately upgrade a agreement that suddenly has a 54% increase in cost, and you take a minute to think about it, you could suddenly be at the bottom of the queue when you were previously at the top. So it's crappy enough that you're raising prices on people, but fine, you're raising prices. Customers decide to accept that new agreement. It seems crappy to re-queue them based on when they accept the new agreement rather than based on when they accepted the old agreement. So all in all, a lot of bad looks for Tesla here, and I hope they step up and honor their original pricing and original queue order for these customers and only apply any new pricing models to new customers. All right, so our next story, Elon's been tweeting a lot about what's coming up for the new versions of full self-driving. Starts off in this thread with a whole Mars catalog tweeting, "Can you tell us more about your thinking behind the pure vision approach? Lots of people arguing no radar is a step backward. Why did you guys decide it was better not to use it?" So Elon replies, "When radar and vision disagree, which one do you believe? Vision has much better precision, so better to double down on vision than do sensor fusion." Tesla Audrey replies then, "If I'm in the third car in a row and the first one stops on Model 3 can detect that by bouncing the radar waves underneath the car directly in front, will this still work with pure vision?" Elon Musk then replies, "These things are best thought of as probabilities. There are 5 forward-facing cameras. It is highly likely that at least one of them will see multiple cars ahead." So, kind of dodges the question to some aspect in my mind. I still think there will be situations where it does not detect those cars in front of them. Maybe Elon's right. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the probabilities of those 5 forward-facing cameras are enough to ensure that it avoids accidents in those situations. But I don't know. I feel like radar's pretty good at this one specific use case, and it's a little disappointing in my mind to see that going away. But I guess we'll see what happens as they continue to develop a full self-driving suite. They have not yet removed radar, at least it does not appear so. So I guess we'll see going forward where that comes in. So the next thread I want to talk about comes from Tristan at RiceFry on Twitter, who said, "We recently got some insight into how Tesla is going to replace radar in recent firmware updates, plus some nifty ML model techniques." And then he kind of goes into some details here. "From the binaries, we can see that they've added velocity and acceleration outputs. These predictions in addition to the existing XYZ outputs, give much of the same information that radar traditionally provides: distance, velocity, acceleration. For auto steer on city streets, you need to know the velocity and acceleration of cars in all directions, but radar is only pointing forward. If it's accurate enough to make a left turn, radar is probably unnecessary for the most part. How can a neural network figure out velocity and acceleration from static images, you ask? They can't. They've recently switched to something that appears to be styled on a recurrent neural network. Net structure is unknown, but they are providing the net with a queue of the 15 most recent hidden states. Seems quite a bit easier to train than normal RNNs, which need to learn to encode historical data and can have issues like vanishing gradients for longer time windows. The velocity and acceleration predictions is new. By giving the last 15 frames, approximately 1 second of data, I'd expect you can train a highly accurate net to predict velocity plus acceleration based off the learned time series. They've already been using these queue-based RNNs with the normal position nets for a few months, presumably to improve stability of the predictions. This matches with the recent public statements from Tesla about new models training on video instead of static images. To evaluate the performance compared to radar, I bet Tesla has run some feature importance techniques on the models, and radar importance has probably dropped quite a bit with the new nets. See this tools. I still think that radar is going to stick around for quite a while for highway usage, since the current camera performance in rain and snow isn't great. NOA often disables in mild rain. City streets might behave better since the relative speed is lower. One nifty trick they've recently added is to task to rectify the images before feeding them into the neural nets. This is common in classical CV applications, so surprised it only popped up in the last couple of months. This makes a lot of sense since it means that the nets don't need to learn the lens distortion. It also likely makes it a lot easier for the nets to correlate objects across multiple cameras since the movement is now much more linear. For more background on long short-term memory, see this blog. They're tricky to train because they need to encode history, which is fed into future runs. The more times you pass the state, the more earlier frames are diluted, hence vanishing gradients. Using a queue like this is clever since it spits into learning about each frame from remembering it. Each net just needs to learn how to encode all the relevant information from its own frame, and then the queue handling the history. Smart Summon appears to still use traditional LTSM or LSTM with a single hidden state and no queue. I wonder if this new technique will make its way into Smart Summon to improve its performance. This guy who is, if you look at his thread here, he is a software engineer and works in ML infrastructure. He seems positive on it, and I think it's good when you see some experts chime in and say, hey, this is what Tesla is doing, this is the approach they're taking, and having mostly positive things to say about it. But he does seem to agree with my opinion that radar is probably not disappearing real soon. I guess we'll see what happens. All right, for our next story, I wanted to touch base on one of my last videos here. We talked about what could be delaying the Model S and the Model X. And it's not spelled out specifically here, but there's a recent tweet from Elon Musk saying, thanks Tesla suppliers for providing us with critical parts. It doesn't directly spell it out, but I think maybe that's pointing to part shortages preventing the Model S and X rollout rather than software like I speculated. So anyway, I guess it'll be interesting to see if we ever actually see a breakdown of why those vehicles have been delayed. And it'll be also interesting to see if this tweet was specifically in relation to that or if it was something else. All right, so my last story of the day here is on Sandy Munro getting his hands on the Volkswagen ID4. This is just the first episode of his breakdown. But if you don't know who Sandy Munro is, he is an automotive expert that does teardowns of vehicles. Generally, in the past, had been paid mostly by external firms, banks, investment funds, other automobile manufacturers to get information about new vehicles and use that information to try to improve their existing or new vehicles they have coming out of the pipeline. So Sandy has made a lot of good content, especially around some of the newer Tesla models. And I'm very eager to see what all he has to say about the Volkswagen ID4. His first impressions in the first video were very positive. He seemed to like it a lot. A couple things he would change, it sounds like, but overall he was more impressed, I think, than he expected to be with it. There are, I think, 3 or 4 of these videos currently out, and they're all interesting. But yeah, it'll be good to see how the story develops and to see kind of what his impressions are of Volkswagen ID4. I'm hoping it's good. I like the looks of it on the outside, and the interior looks all right too. All right, so we'll close out this first episode of Rearview Mirror with some thank yous. I want to thank everyone who's been watching all of my videos, especially the Tesla Model S and Model X refresh video. I just kind of started doing this for fun because I enjoy talking about Tesla and other renewable energy stuff, and I never really expected anyone at all to watch my videos, so I know it's not huge by YouTube standards, but to be over 300 views is just shocking to me, especially since I just started this. So thank you everybody who watched that video, and for everybody who stuck around this long in this one. To close it out, I'd like to do these kind of videos weekly, just the wrap up of smaller news stories that aren't enough really to get a whole video out of, but information I found interesting throughout the week. And to close these out, I'm going to go ahead and offer up some Q&A. So if you want to go ahead and leave comments in this video or send tweets to my Twitter handle, which will be bottom right hand corner of the screen, probably, at surging_ahead. I'll be sure to get back to those. So On my previous video, I only had one comment from actual human beings, and that was from Linus, who said, "Nice video," and then went on to say, "I think the delays are the curse of the joke steering wheel legalization." And I'm not sure if that was a joke or if he misspelled yoke. Either way, I like it, and you very well could be right. I think that's a definite possibility, and it'll be interesting to see if we ever get to truly know the history of what happened and why these took so long. But regardless, I'm excited to see them out there. I want to see some people get their hands on that Plaid Model S, and I'm excited to see a bunch of journalists going from 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. I believe it will be hilarious, and it should be fun to watch those starting to get out into people. So thanks, Linus, for the comment and the compliment, and I appreciate the feedback. Anyone else who leaves it, I'll read it, and as long as there's only a few of them, at the end of these weekly episodes, I'll be sure to reply to it in person like this. And if YouTube stops having comments be weird, I'll be able to also reply in the YouTube thread. So once again, this has been Brett with Surging Ahead. Thanks, and have a great day.